Hello, I'm going to read some poems from my new book, May Swim, published by Bloodaxe books. And this is the first reading I'm giving from the book. So I'm very excited and moved. This first poem, I suppose, follows on from the poems in my previous book, Off Duty, which were about the illness and death of my husband, Stephen, many of them, not all of them. And so I think I'll read it first. It's called Two Women, One Grave. And Stephen and I met when we were both in our middle years, so obviously we had had other relationships before we met each other and had our children. And so he had been engaged to someone before me, and after his death, this lady wanted to come and visit his grave, because they had been in a partnership for some time, and she wanted to mourn him herself. It was a rather strange experience for me, but I welcomed her and brought her to see the grave. Two women, one grave. Now at last, she wants to see his grave. This is our first time meeting. She turns out to be small, straight-nosed, determined, oddly familiar. It was she who ended it, their long engagement, moved on to a better job, a certainty she needed more than he had to give. As I puppet my way through the narrative of his illness, she grows still. It is a long drive to the grave, and I wait while she has her tears. I'd like to blame her for something. She'd like to pour balm on me. She thinks quietly, I imagine, of her lucky escape. I think of his misery. But we are alive now, and he has been gone for 7 years. So I drive more hours, and we speak of our children, as women do, we women who live long enough. This poem is called Deluge, and it's informed by my awareness of climate change, my luck in having a wild garden on my doorstep, which is full of life, full of wildflowers, full of foxes and bees and frogs. And I'm so aware that that beautiful order is in danger of being disrupted by climate change. So this is behind this poem, that awareness, but also it's a story of a rescue. Deluge. I pass, scarcely noticing the raft, a leaf floating in the full bucket beneath the water butt, clinging on, a sailor in the storm, a soaked bee. I bring it in, show my daughter this striped survivor of the June showers. Set on our kitchen table, the bee is offered mock orange, clover and buttercup. First, it dries its fur by combing with hind legs. When the wet is routed, its proboscis delves for nectar. At last, the wings are energized to whir, so we venture out, a mild night, getting ready for another downpour. Undaunted, the bee takes flight. We smile and, turning, find a frilled green moth flirting on a tassel like an acrobat, taking shelter in our light. At our feet, a snail glides, smooth and unguent on slick ground, a woodlouse clinging to its shell, a miniature rodeo chancer, catching a free ride as the flood gathers. So the next one I want to read is the title poem of the book. This was written during lockdown in spring of 2020, when here in Ireland there was a phase during which we were allowed to leave our houses only if we went within a 2-kilometre radius. And luckily for me, the weather was beautiful and I could go to my local beach. It was within that very limited radius. I love swimming. I haven't quite started this year. I've just dipped my toes in for a paddle. it does bring me a huge rush of endorphins when I get out of that cold water, and I know it's the same for a lot of people, but it was particularly vital for me just to keep my sanity intact during that very frightening time, that spring where none of us really knew what was going on and people were dying all around us. May swim, White Rock Beach, 2020. I wade in, my hands wringing from the pain of the water's freezing touch, its greed to suck the warmth from my toasted skin. After immersion, every cell tingles, glowing and replete. I peel off wet togs and dress, the clench of fear released. I'm a sea pink, blooming in the rocks. So I'm going to read another sea poem now. And I think, you know, we are in danger of seeing something like the sea as just a resource for our pleasure, there for us. And if you're a regular swimmer and you've got a bit of respect for nature, you begin to understand how it doesn't always work out that way. And certainly this seal taught me a bit of a lesson on this particular day, when the sea was a bit rough and I was taking a chance. The seal. What are you doing in my element? The seal's black eyes challenge me as I flail in the tall waves, seaweed tangling my legs. Wild, whiskered canine of the salt, he appraises me with a hunter's look. He's far too close, with a head on him like a bucket. I scrabble and squawk, kicking to cheat the tide and his looming bulk, to show my friend I'm safe. Really I am, I can do this. Just as my feet find purchase, a wave breaks. I'm thrown, tumbled, reefed, as the water curls and separates, sand whirling my ears, weed muddling my hair, shingle scrubbing me raw. I shove up, shaken, snot slimed, flesh marbled cold. The seal drifts north, sinking and surfacing in comfort. I stumble in the stinging spray, clumsy interloper, refusing to buckle. Another sea story here, but in this one, the creature of the sea is really a metaphor for something quite different. It's called stories. The giant dappled squid lives deep and dark, away from the eyes of men. But stories tell of a sailor caught by a huge tentacle that swung across his boat and clasped him tight. So the tensile grip of my desire swims in her silent haunt. Do not be surprised if one day her terrible need forces her into the light, and with one long swipe she takes you whole. So I'm going to finish with a poem called Home to Vote, and this brings us back to a woman's body and her right to her own physical autonomy, which is something that in my lifetime in Ireland has changed a great deal from when I was a young woman. Finally, in May of 2018, we won the right to have legal abortions in this country. This is after years of thousands of women taking boats and planes across the water to Britain, where in secrecy and shame, often giving false names, they had terminations there and came home and said nothing. So finally women have the right to have an abortion here without taking that journey. But what was particularly sweet, I felt, was the time of the referendum, a lot of young Irish people were living abroad or studying abroad, and they all came home to vote in the referendum and helped to make sure that what we wanted and needed actually happened. And they came back in a wonderful spirit of celebration, quite a different journey. Home to Vote. Dublin, 25th of May, 2018. They burst through customs, a river of repealers returning to swing the referendum, whooping, twirling, laughing, just when the last banner has been hung, the last leaflet delivered. We're home now, they say, fresh off the ferry, the plane. Let's do this, we're here to win. Fleets of cars take them to the polling stations, motoring through Friday traffic, all the way to Cork, Galway, Clare. They share selfies, revel in pampering from delighted parents. The pubs are full and it isn't Christmas. Back from Vancouver, New York, Dubai, they stay up all night, and when the vote is sure, they flood the streets. They take the castle, dancing farewell to secret crossings, to danger, to shame. Thank you.